happening?
I do not want to fight.
I want to fight with you. Fight with me. Fight for me.
Did we really need this prequel series? That's what we're going to be discussing for this particular review of Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story. So let's dive right into the review because it's going to be quite lengthy, so I'm going to try to cut it down to get right to the point. Do we need this prequel? We absolutely do. We actually needed this because for the most part, we get to understand and unearth a character that's very strong, that's very regal, that's very poised and put all together in a way that we've seen throughout the Bridgerton franchise or series. But now we get to see her in a different light, and that is actually pretty cool to see. So let's first talk about what this show actually offers. The first thing I want to mention is the continuity is really spot on. We still get that nice, consistent Bridgerton feels and tonality. Now, I have to say this right off the bat, as we've already experienced with Bridgerton, it's for mature audiences, and we still get that here for the most part. It's actually one of the heavier shows in the Bridgerton line, and we even see a LGBTQ scene or scenes in this particular show. So this is not meant for everyone, but we get again that nice tonality that we've seen in the past from the visuals, from the set pieces. The set design is still very what's that? Hindi naman Renaissance, no, but that very periodic kind of show that you really see is consistent with everything we've seen so far from Bridgerton. One of the things I love about this show is actually the music, because we get this like string quartet orchestra type kind of music but with modern songs, and that's actually some of the things I look forward to when watching Bridgerton. And we actually get very appropriate singers or songs tracks in this particular show. We get artists such as Beyonce, Alicia Keys, Whitney Houston. This is a fictionalized story, but one that is rooted heavily on historical figures, on historical people, and some historical events. Now, it's not going to be 100% historically accurate, and that's fine. You know, one of the things I love watching nowadays are historical stories that have been revamped in a way and have been creatively produced for us to really immerse in the story. And it becomes an eye-opener to want to know more about history. I got to understand a bit more about Queen Charlotte, about King George III, because I was interested. I got hooked to know more about history. What I appreciate with like movies such as Spencer, mga Blonde with Ana de Armas, which is a retelling of Marilyn Monroe, there are facts. Okay, there are facts that are present, but then they kind of interpreted the story in between the lines. So this is a fact, this is a fact. Maybe this happened because of these facts. And that was something that I actually appreciate with this kind of creative story. So you have to know, if you're going into this, it's not going to be like a biographical retelling. It's going to be a creative, artistic narrative that we must have to understand, therefore to appreciate the story all the more. This is a show that showcased what proper representation should be all about. Now, we have a lot of shows from Netflix that change elements from an existing story to be inclusive, and I feel like Bridgerton fans were growing nuts, or even historical enthusiasts, like, why would you change Queen Charlotte, who's obviously white, into a woman of color? But we get to see a woman here who has struggles, who's not all together, who's imperfect in many ways. She was forced to marry, she was forced to stand up in order to unite kingdoms, she was in a marriage that she really couldn't understand, she was thrown into the deep end. You see the strength develop, and therefore you see, okay, so this was point A, point B is where we are in the Bridgerton world. And one of the things that this story also does is it combines a past narrative and somewhat a current or present narrative in the Bridgerton world. Yes, we get a lot of the Bridgerton siblings throughout the Bridgerton series. For Queen Charlotte, that is focused on Lady Danbury, on Queen Charlotte, and even the older, like the grandfather and the mother of the Bridgerton children. That back and forth between the present timeline of the Bridgertons that we follow while going back to the past was actually very seamless. The way it was done was very seamless. My only room for concern is the pacing. The finale was just superb. It was emotional. It was the only episode I cried in. There were a lot of great dialogues all throughout, but majority was thrown in the last episode. And given that this is just 6 episodes, it still felt long. But this felt slow in retelling almost a day's worth in each episode. I also didn't like that middle episode. I think it was the 3rd or 4th, somewhere there. It would have been perfect. It would have been a great episode, to be honest, if it didn't feel like a mere recap. It just felt like a filler episode. There was nothing much of added value in the perspective of King George. It was actually something that you could have read in between the lines as well. All things considered, everything was very satisfying. Especially if you wrap up the entire season of Queen Charlotte. This whole story was neatly tied in a perfect bow. I love the conclusion, and they can actually jump off from that in the next Bridgerton seasons. So I give this show a rating of 8 out of 10. There are things again that suffered along the way, but as a whole, it's a pretty great show. And there's a deeper, darker side to this particular story that I just love. And that's it for this video. So, as always, don't forget to make every day into an adventure. God bless. Peace out.